Over the years, Games Workshop have lent their license to a number of different video game projects, with varying results, ranging from big budget titles to microtransaction riddled mobile games. Some of them memorable classics and some of them you'd rather forget. And I'd like to show you my top 5 favourite Warhammer games, and let us know your favourites in the comments below. At number 5 we have Battlefleet Gothic Armada. When the first game was announced in 2015, I thought all my Christmases had come at once. One of my all-time favourite games is Homeworld 2, a space-based 3D RTS. And my favourite ship aesthetic from any sci-fi series is Warhammer 40k. And what's not to love about a giant flying space cathedral with macro cannons? And with a ram attached to the bow, just in case. But it turned out this game was a slightly different kind of RTS. There was no base building or resource collecting, it was based more around tactics and manoeuvring your small fleet. But I was not disappointed by this game, in fact I was pleasantly surprised. You play the role of Admiral Spire of the Imperial Navy, charged with clearing the Gothic sector of Xenos and traitor threats. All the characters in this game are well voiced, as you could expect from a Warhammer game.
By the Fang, I'll not die without a fight.
And the ship models are faithful recreations, capturing all the ostentatious over-the-topness of the Warhammer 40k universe. During the battle portion of the game, you and your enemy deploy your pre-selected fleets on either side of the map, using various abilities and weapons either to destroy each other's fleets or to capture various areas on the map until the score counter depletes. In most cases you will be evenly matched with your enemy, so this is where tactical superiority reigns. The ships have different angles of fire, so for example some of them have powerful broadsides while others have lance weapons which fire from the bow of the ship. Or you can use the speed boost to just ram your enemy, which is extremely satisfying when you line it up just right. The campaign portion of this game involves conquering and managing sectors through the galaxy map. It's not that exciting, it's more of just a vehicle to get into the battles. And the sequel to this game does build on the campaign a little bit, but really it still comes down to just the battles. Also in the sequel you can choose different races to do the campaign with, each with their own narrative. This game and its sequel are definitely worth picking up in 2022, as they'll most likely be very cheap, the graphics are still good and you'll probably get several hours out of this, especially if you decide to utilise the multiplayer aspect of this game. That wasn't for me unfortunately, I just got owned in every single game. The Vermintide series is a 4-player cooperative hack and slash game set in the Warhammer Fantasy era known as the End Times. This is a very bad time to be alive. It follows 5 heroes as they fight through hordes of Skaven and Chaos Warriors to accomplish various objectives. The first game was released in 2015 and its sequel arrived in 2018, which is a very similar game just with updated visuals, new missions and enemies, but follows the same group of characters, and these are a witch hunter named Victor Saltspire, an Empire soldier named Marcus Kruber, a dwarf ranger called Barden, a wood elf waywatcher called Carolyn, and my favourite, Sienna the Bright Wizard. Sienna has an interesting mechanic where you cast spells from your staff, but if you cast too many spells you'll end up exploding, which is easy to do when you start getting panicked. Each character has their own special abilities and weapons, which makes for a dynamic multiplayer experience with each player having their own role, depending on the weapons and abilities you've chosen to take. The gameplay is very satisfying and has a good mix of melee and ranged attacks, and when you get into the thick of a Skaven horde it gets really tense and exciting. And the dialogue between the characters for me is what makes this game great. It's not only funny, but it gives you a nice insight into the world of Warhammer Fantasy. And if guns and sci-fi are more your thing, in late 22 we are getting Darktide, a 40k version of this game, which will be a similar format just with 40k characters and weapons, but more on that later. The first Dawn of War game released in 2004 on the PC and was a huge success. A real-time strategy game from Relic Games set in the Warhammer 40k universe. This game was built on the formula of the classic RTS games such as Command & Conquer, using elements such as base building, but also adding its own new flares, such as special abilities for units, the ability to reinforce and retreat, and the cover system which lets you utilise the map in new and interesting ways. In my opinion this game was best enjoyed via multiplayer, either online or on LAN, which me and my friends spent many hours wrestling over the well-designed maps. And this game owed a lot of its longevity due to its number of playable factions. This game had pretty much all of them, including Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, Necrons, Eldar, Orcs, Tau, Imperial Guard, and you could even customize your colors and make your own Space Marine chapter, for example. And this game came out with a bunch of expansion packs too, which kept the game fresh and exciting. Back when we used to get proper extra content for games. The game also had 2 successors in Dawn of War 2 and 3, but sadly they were extremely lacking. Instead of building on the successful experience of the first game, they went down the path of trying to change the gameplay completely, leading to an empty feeling game with low unit counts. Which is a shame considering they could have just reskinned the old game with new graphics and people would have bought the shit out of it. Having said that, Dawn of War 3 had an epic trailer and you should definitely go check that out. This game in its entirety costs less than $10 now to buy, so it's definitely a good time to pick it up. And if you are going to pick this up in 2022, I definitely recommend the Ultimate Apocalypse mod. This may be a bit biased to me to put this game in the number 2 slot because I love Total War games. I've played them since Shogun, which I picked up around 2002 when I got my first computer, and I've played every single one of them and loved most of them. I'm including all 3 Total War Warhammer games in this review, because at the end of the day, most people who play this game play the Mortal Empires campaign, which is very similar in each game, just with a larger roster and map. We're still waiting for Game 3's in Mortal Empires though. The mix of real-time strategy and 4X style gameplay is a match made in heaven. It's the perfect game to play if you want to drop in and out at your own pace, or sit there all day playing, which I've done many times. On the 4X side, the game involves building up your towns and populations, engaging in diplomatic negotiations with other factions, and building and moving around your armies. Which of course you're going to have to finance, using economic buildings and trade agreements. And when your army meets an enemy army or an enemy settlement, that's when the real-time strategy part begins. The battle starts with each player deploying their armies on either side of the battlefield. And then you attempt to smash your foe, sometimes utilizing thousands of soldiers per battle. Using spears, swords, arrows, cannons, and with the addition of the Warhammer setting, big scary monsters and magic. If you're a fan of big cinematic historical battles from movies such as Gladiator and Kingdom of Heaven, you'll probably enjoy Total War. If you also enjoy fantasizing about being a benevolent or despotic leader of men, you'll probably enjoy Total War. And if you also like Warhammer Fantasy, well then need I say more. Gameplay has a smooth learning curve and is easy to pick up, but you can also refine and master your strategies. If you want to compete online, it has an active community of players. Or jump on Discord and play with me. I'm not very good, so you'll probably win. Or we can start a co-op campaign, which are also very fun, and sometimes last for weeks. Some honourable mentions that didn't quite make it to this list include Return of Reckoning, which is a fan-hosted private server for the famous 2008 MMO Warhammer Age of Reckoning, which was a good MMO in its own right. It just couldn't compete with WoW, which goes for a lot of the MMOs released around that time, which is now seeing a new lease on life with a committed base of fans. Another is Shadow of the Horned Rat. This 1995 classic was a bit ahead of its time. It was almost a predecessor to Total War. This game is now available on GOG and can run on modern systems, but I warn you, it's extremely difficult. And I wanted to include Fire Warrior just for the memes. And this year also has some goodies in store for us. First of all, not strictly a new game, but the Immortal Empires, which is the sandbox map for Warhammer Total War 3. A lot of the fans are excited for this because it did not come with the release of the game, and it's been about 4 months so far, and it's only releasing in a beta, which is a bit of a disappointment. But with the sheer amount of races involved in this, I think it's fair to say that there's going to be a little bit of back and forth testing going on. So enjoy those Doom stacks while you can. And at some point at the end of the year, we're getting Darktide, the 40k spiritual successor to Vermintide. This is going to be another horde survival game, pitting you against thousands of chaos cultists. You and your party fight for your life using all the weapons you can find. This one looks particularly gory and chaotic, which I'm looking forward to. And last but not least, it's Space Marine 2, a game a lot of us have been waiting a long time for. Judging by the cinematic trailer that was released for this game, it follows the story of Captain Titus, although now appears to be a lieutenant. And the fact that I know that means I've read way too many Warhammer books. I really hope they give this game as much love and care as they did for the first one. But I'm also aware that sequels these days don't tend to pan out as intended, but I'm entering this with zero expectations, just like I did with the original. And in at number 1 for me in my top 10 Warhammer games is Space Marine. Released in 2011 and developed by Relic, came out of nowhere. I picked up this game with zero expectations and was immediately blown away by the sheer quality of this game. I originally picked it up on PS3 but later bought it on the PC. It is a game based in the 40k universe, following a group of Ultramarines sent to reinforce the Imperial Guard on an Imperial Forge world beset by orcs. You play as Captain Titus, a second company Ultramarines commander, voiced by Mark Strong, accompanied by veteran Sergeant Sidonus and a plucky young marine with everything to prove, Leandros. The story has a few twists and turns and is your average 40k fare, which is absolutely fine by me. The things that set this game apart and put it on a pedestal for me is firstly the sound. The heavy sound of a ceramite clad Space Marine foot hitting the ground, the chunky click of the bolt rounds releasing from the bolt rifle, and then the satisfying splat as the round detonates as it hits its target. This game does a great job of recreating the over-the-topness of 40k. Secondly, it's the gameplay. This game really does a good job of capturing the chaotic nature of combat in the 40k universe. Most of the time you'll be tearing it up in melee combat, wielding the iconic chainsaw to mow through hordes of orcs, getting off those brutal finishes which regain your health, which also I think is an awesome addition. I think it really helps the momentum of a game when the way you get health is to fight harder. And games like Doom also do a great job of using this mechanic. The axe is also pretty fun when you get your hands on it, but the Thunder Hammer is where you really start having some fun, especially with the jump pack. Forget about it. The multiplayer on this game was also fun and had a fair amount of character customization, and if you live in the US or the UK you can still find lobbies, and there's even a modded version of this game that you can try out that I hear has a pretty active community. Unfortunately in Australia we don't seem to get many servers around. In terms of looks, this game hasn't aged very much at all. It still looks great 11 years later, and I still pick this game up at least once every couple of years to finish. And now would be the perfect time to pick up this game as Space Marine 2 is on its way. And plus this game probably costs about $4 now. I really hope for the sequel that they preserve the character of this game. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing about some of the games that Warhammer has to offer. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll be back with some more content soon.